If you want to take your boss nut drivetrain from something like this to something like this, all with parts you can get from eBay or AliExpress for under 100 quid, stick around.
Nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear.
Hello again YouTube, and in this video I'd like to welcome back to the channel a good old friend. Yep, my gorgeous Calibre BBB mountain bike. Now, this is a bike that I've got a real soft spot for, and even though it doesn't see a lot of airtime on the channel, I do ride it quite a bit, and I neglect it if I'm honest. It was one of the first bikes that I featured on the channel, taking it from the unboxing and build, but then as other things have kind of come and gone, the boss nut has just sat there in the shed, being ridden occasionally, but not finding a lot of airtime on the channel, just basically because there wasn't a lot to do with it. But recently, and ironically after cleaning the chain, I discovered that the whole drivetrain was shot. As you can see in the video here, rear gears were skipping, and it didn't take long to confirm that indeed the chain was, well, you can just see it here hanging like a rope bridge, and completely shot, as confirmed by my chain reading indicator there. Now this has got an odd front crank on it with a 32 tooth 76 BCD sprocket on it, and those are quite hard to come by. Well, you can get them, but the 76 BCD front sprockets, they're quite expensive. So I went looking for an alternative. Okay, so here are the parts that I've got to fix the bike. I've gone with an OE SRAM chain. These are cheap enough. This was an eBay, no, this was an Amazon special, I think. And I think, don't quote me, I'll pull up the order and put the details on screen. I think we're talking about in the order of 30 quid for that, 33 quid I think that was for the chain. So yeah, I'm replacing the entire crankset with this one. Now, this particular crankset and chainring combination is available on AliExpress for about 30-ish quid. And I got exactly the same off of eBay for about 30-ish quid. So there was hardly anything in it price-wise. The only difference is, as I say, this arrived probably 3 weeks quicker than if I'd ordered it from AliExpress. So there's that. So I think, you know, if you find it on AliExpress, just take that description and take it into eBay and see if you can get it there. It looks quite well made. So this is a brand called Jiankun. I don't know, somebody could tell me how to pronounce that. But basically it's a complete replacement crank. The crank arms seem quite nice actually, they seem good quality. Better than I was expecting, if I'm fair. And it all looks pretty well put together. The only thing that concerned me when I took this out of the packet is, it says just don't want to lose that seal. This crank arm is designed for a double chainring, and I did wonder if there was going to be clearance. Let me take you in a bit. And I did wonder if there's going to be sufficient clearance between the bottom bracket area and this, given that we've got these fixing posts for an extra chainring on there, which aren't on the original. But I've had a look and this should fit fine. Now, also bear in mind that if you've got a BBB or a boss nut, it's got a front mech hanger, so that whole bottom bracket area should be designed for a double crankset. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think this is going to go straight on. And in terms of bike bling, this looks a lot better than the one that's currently on there, so I'm quite happy with that. There is also coming today an OE SRAM 1142 cassette for the back, plus I've replaced the jockey wheels, so this is going to be front to back complete replacement of the drive chain, and we'll see how this goes. So the first job is just slipping off that crusty old chain. Now I always keep mine until I've resized the new one, just so that I know exactly I'm going to size it correctly. Then off with the non-drive side crank arm. The inner bolt on mine came out quite easily, but the outer bolt was quite seized in there. Now I made the mistake of trying to take it out with this extension in the ratchet, and you can, like I did here, get your ratchet just a little bit wonky, and then oh dear, there goes the head of the bolt. So there was nothing for it. I tried an extractor on it. I've got some good Irwin extractors, but as you can see here, I drilled it a little bit, screwed one of those in, wasn't having it. So at the end of the day, I simply bit the bullet and drilled the bolt out. It's always a good and satisfying feeling when you feel the head of the bolt snap. Nice, like that. There you go. Then don't forget to remove your preload cap. Make sure that the tension is off both the pinch bolts before you try to take that cap out, and just slip the remainder of that bolt out if you've had to drill it out like me. So with the preload cap removed, you can then just pull the crank arm off. The drive side always takes a little bit of persuasion to come out of the frame, because the shaft will have swelled up a little bit. Okay, so there is a slight issue in that the bottom bracket currently fitted to the bike is shot, for lack of a better way of putting it. Basically, it feels as rough as anything when you spin it, so I'm going to need a new one. Luckily, if you've watched any of my other videos, you might know that I kind of got into the habit of refurbing the bottom brackets for this bike, and I've got one here. Just happen to have this in my spare box. I think I remember saying in a video when I did this, I'm going to put a few of these on the shelf because I think they'll be useful. So hopefully this might come in useful now. Let me just have a look and see what condition this is in. Oh, lovely, silky. And the bonus is I can try them on the shaft whilst I've got them here, and that's going to be a lovely fit. Right, so let me go and whip the old bottom bracket out. To remove the bottom bracket, do make sure that you've got a good fitting tool to remove those external cups, and both the cups on mine were a little bit seized, if I'm honest. Now personally, I don't think there's anything wrong if you can't get those to shift under a good amount of pressure, to just give them just a little bit of persuasion with a hammer, just to start them off. Now all you really need to do is just break the seal. So once you've got the cup moving, then you can spin it out easy enough with the tool to a point where you feel like you can just spin it out by hand, and then out she comes. Don't forget, both caps unscrew towards the front of the bike. The only thing I think I need to establish now is, do I put the chain rings on the outer or inner of the new crank? I think the chainring needs to go on the inner. So we're going to put it on the inner to begin with, given that we can always swap it over later. So with the new or replacement bottom bracket fitted, I just slipped the new crank assembly in, and then I just took the time to get a vernier and measure the gap between the inner of the chainring and the frame, just to compare that with the gap I measured on the old chain set. And on this one, it was fractions of a millimetre out, so I'm perfectly happy with that. On with the non-drive side, and then basically before you do up the pinch bolts, just slip that preload cap in. Now on this particular crankset, this IXF crankset, you do get a winged tool to put that cap in with. It's a little bit fiddly to get started, and it's plastic, so do be very careful with it, because it would be really easy to cross thread that, and I think once you've knackered that cap, you'd be in a world of pain. Doesn't need to be very tight, just give it a pinch with a couple of fingers, and then make sure that there's no play in the crank arm and that the cranks spin nice and freely as they do here. And basically that's a good one. Tighten up your pinch bolts. There's no marked torque on these, but I just tighten them to the same as a Shimano bolt, so they're just 13 Newton meters. I then just slipped the cassette off the rear wheel, which is easy enough to do, and the new cassette goes on really easily. Now mine came pre-built onto one of these plastic formers, and if you line that former up carefully with your free hub, you can just slip the whole cassette on in one go like this, and that makes your life a lot easier compared to sort of trying to get each sprocket on individually. Really nice idea, that. Just to finish the job, back on goes the new chain, and with its new power link, and then just give everything a spin to make sure that it works as it should. So as you can see here, my gear's indexed perfectly. I haven't played around with these at all. This is literally just with everything fitted, the new chain on there, and you compare that with the video I showed you of when the chain was worn. So here's the finished article, and as I said earlier, I think that this is a nice bit of bling. You know, this is certainly a better looking drivetrain than the bike comes with as standard. I know these are arguably cheap Chinese parts, but let's be honest, these triple Bs came out of the factory with a Samox drivetrain on there. So the crank and the bottom bracket, everything at the front there is all Samox. And have you ever heard of them? So there it is. The Calibre BBB getting some proper love, and a completely new drivetrain. Now what I'll do is, because like I say, these are cheaper parts, but I personally don't have a problem with it, because like I say, the parts it came out of the factory with aren't premium. Samox, they seem to be a good enough manufacturer, but we aren't talking SRAM or Shimano OE there. We are talking one of your less than premium manufacturers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a run for a month or so and see how it goes. Now obviously the sort of riding I do with my mountain bike possibly isn't like the sort of riding that you do with your mountain bike. I'm basically sort of grassy, muddy trails, but nonetheless it should give me a good indication of how this is bedding in and how it's going. Anyway, if you've stuck with it this long, as always, you have my respect and admiration. Thank you very much for this one, YouTube, and I will catch you in the next.